This is Bumper to Bumper, the car show. Drive in anxious and cruise out confident. With the best automotive information for your vehicle. And now your hosts, Matt Allen and Dave Riccio.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Bumper Radio. I am Dave Riccio here along with Matt Allen, and together we are your KTAR car guys, heard every Saturday from 11 to noon. At Bumper to Bumper Radio, we're helping you, the motoring public, have a better overall car experience. If you got car questions, we've got answers, so we encourage you to give us a call at 602-277-5827, 602-277-KTAR. And always, if you're the shy type, you can send us a text at 411-923. As long as you're not texting and driving, that's totally fine with us. You can get away with that. So today on the Bumper to Bumper Roadmap, we're going to have a little bit of fact or fiction about everyone's favorite topic, going to the emissions station. And we're going to have open phones and texting and vehicle emissions. You know, Matt, I thought I knew everything about emissions, but we've got a guy here in studio that tells me I don't know much about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, as we sit here before the show and we're chatting about these things, I'm starting to realize there's a lot of things that a lot of people probably don't know, and even we're in the business, and little things. I mean, the percentage of fail rates, I didn't realize some of those were that high, or what the public's perception is about the program in the first place. I think a lot of people probably, that's a government program, it's got to be bad. No, we know better, we can tell you. But I believe in this case, you're right. I mean, you ever go down to Mexico City or some of these other foreign countries that don't have any emissions testing at all?
Not so good.
Not really.
Well, we've got Trevor Bajori, I think I said that right, and he has spent a lot of time with the ADQ, and tell us a little bit about it.
Thank you. So I'm Trevor Bajori. I'm the I'm the director of the Water Quality Division, which you think, what does water quality have to do with the VEI program? Nothing. I recently moved to water quality, but before that I was the deputy director of air quality, in which I had some responsibility of the VEI program. VEI program, like you said, there's a lot of people who just think that it is not an effective program. We estimate that there's about 86 tons per day that are reduced from this program.
I believe it. I mean, if I just think back even when I was a kid, I mean, the air is so much cleaner now than it used to be. I mean, you get sick standing at a street corner of a busy intersection with all the car exhaust. Oh,
you can smell them. And there's a lot of things besides vehicle emissions that are going to go into air quality. I mean, you see the dust, and I mean, the weather can even play a big role in it. But what we can control is our cars. And whether you need to go through emissions or not, you should still have your car running well. Driving around with your check engine light is not a good thing. And besides the fact a lot of people don't know, what was it, 50% of the people that you surveyed had no clue that their car would fail emissions with the check engine light on?
Right. With the newer technology, if your check engine light is on for a 96 or newer car, you're going to fail the emissions test regardless what that light is on for. And 50%, a survey we did at the end of 2013, 50% of people were either unsure or didn't think it would make a difference.
Now, I could see some people getting chapped a little bit, about that. Maybe I think there's some cases where a fuel gauge will make the check engine light on. Transmission failure will make the check engine light on. Well, transmission failure, if the car's not going into overdrive or not shifting well, it's not going to be as efficient. I might get a little bit of heartburn if I failed because my fuel gauge wasn't working right. So, yep. But I guess you've heard everything and every complaint and every opposite opinion, right?
Of course. And let's take your fuel gauge. The emissions test for the evaporative system is not a continuously run system. It checks it every periodically, depending on if your gas tank's within the right level. And if the computer doesn't know what the gas tank level is, you can't pass.
Oh, that's okay. There you go. See, you don't even think about this. Because, you have to have, it has to be a certain ambient degree temperature outside. You have to have a certain amount of fuel in the car. Now it makes sense. Duh.
You guys are talking about an evap system. I don't know if everybody knows what an evap system is, but that's probably the most common code I see in a car. A car comes in, we scan everyone that comes through the door. Evap code, evap code, evap code. It's not that one that's going to make your car run bad, but it's one that's there. And what it is the fumes, and maybe you can explain this better, but the gas in the tank, we don't want those fumes evaporating off the top of that gas going out in the atmosphere.
Absolutely true. So one of the challenges we have here in Phoenix specifically, Tucson as well, is what's called ozone pollution. What happens is those fumes plus some other pollution get mixed in the heat, and they form ozone, which is unhealthy on the ground level. And so you're right. And I would also add that probably most of those failures are for gas caps, because gas caps tend to leak more than the rest of the system. We have implemented, like we were talking about before the show, a free gas cap program where if you come in and fail because your gas cap, we'll replace it for you and send you on your way with a passing certificate.
That's pretty good.
How did that system or that gas cap program come about? Through complaints or through feedback from consumers?
It actually came through a couple different ways. Complaints, absolutely. I was talking to my father-in-law about it one day, and he had failed for his gas cap. And so that was one of the indicators. But we'd also seen what Ohio had done. Ohio actually implemented a similar program and just made huge differences in their failure rates.
The other thing we were talking about before the show is the evap emissions and how difficult some of these problems can be to find. I mean, you can fail the gas cap or even the whole evaporative system. The manufacturers measure slightly different than ADEQ does on the test, but we're talking 0.002 to 0.008 of an inch. So imagine that car coming into your shop with an evaporative system failure, and the technician now has to probably go through, I don't know, there's 10 to 20 feet of hoses and tubing probably that are related to
all
the gas
easily
cap.
accessible, of course.
Yeah, they're all right there in front of you. The engineers design these for ease of repair. But you've got a gas cap, and then there's probably, gosh, I don't know, 8 to 10 different components if you count the gas tank, the different valves and stuff. So to go find these leaks, go find it's not like a garden hose where it just sprays water out of it. You can't see it. So they can be very difficult to fix at times.
Well, you said that gas cap, that free gas cap program put a big dent in the amount of failures that we're going through. You were running like 13%, something more in there, and 14, and it's coming down.
Yeah, so one of the goals that ADEQ has is to reduce initial failures on vehicles through our outreach and through our changes to our program by 50% over 5 years. So we've got about 2 years left in that. And so we were running right around 13 to 11% failures on initial tests. Since then, we've reduced that to about 5.5%, mostly due because of the gas cap program. We do have another program that we haven't rolled out significantly. I say program, a slogan, to try to help people understand that if their check engine light is on, they're not going to pass the emissions test. The slogan is check, fix, pass. So if your check engine light's on, get it checked, get it fixed, and you'll pass your test.
Check, fix, pass. Check, fix, pass.
Do you have any idea what, and this may not be something that you guys track at all, what percentage of shops actually make the repair and then take the car and complete the test for the consumer?
We don't have those types of statistics. What we do have is if you go to our website, the best website for VEI is myazcar.com. If you go on that website, you can see the results. If somebody comes with a car and it fails and takes it to a shop, on the back of your test, you're supposed to fill out, who fixed my car. And so we do have a percentage of vehicles that have passed or failed once they were fixed by that shop.
Yeah, there's a report card basically. So before you go in, you can go to myazcar.com and find that. It's on our Facebook page?
Bumper to Bumper Facebook page. You'll find that. So bumpertobumperradio.com, our Facebook link is on there, and you'll find it right there.
Well, the other useful tool that I just recently learned about in January is you can go find the vehicle failure, well, not even failure history, the emissions test history of the vehicle. So now as part of our pre-purchase inspection or buying program, if a customer brings a car in to have us check it out, we are now doing that. And all you have to do is put in the VIN number. So if you're out buying a car, used car, you may want to go to My AZ Car, and there's a tab for vehicle history or something. It's pretty easy to navigate. Put the VIN number in, and that's going to tell you a little bit about that car. We had a car failed 13 times in the last 5 years or something like that. And
that's not a car you want to buy. You don't want to. It's tough to own a car that has an emission problem that's like ongoing.
Yeah.
Oh no, got to go to emissions. You dread that thing when it shows up in the mail.
Big time. So we have 5 years of exemption from the purchase of a brand new car. And then what's the breakdown after that?
So anything older than 1967 doesn't have to test. 67 through 5 years of today have to test their car. And for vehicles that are subject to the dyno test, it's called an IM147 test. It's 80 and newer, I believe. And OBD vehicles, the onboard diagnostic systems, those are good for 2 years, the registration cycle. The older vehicles are only 1 year.
Now, I know one way to cheat the system a little bit. How about that all-wheel drive car that's got to go in the dyno?
All right, so there are some cars that are designed in such a way that our system can't really test them very well.
Right.
So what we typically do is revert to just a standing idle test.
Okay.
If it's a tailpipe test, the newer cars it doesn't matter because it's the computer check anyway.
Right. The car. Well, yeah, and I guess you're right. There's probably not that many all-wheel drive cars pre 90. Well, a lot of the Audis and Subarus are. So if you've got one of those hot rod Subarus or something, you may be able to
get a different
get around
test.
it a little
Get a different
bit,
test.
right? Just got to make sure it runs clean at idle.
We got Tony, Joe, Robert, and Dennis in an open line at 602-277-5827, 602-277-KTAR. You're listening to Matt and Dave, your KTAR car guys on Bumper to Bumper Radio. Well, welcome back to Bumper to Bumper Radio. I am Dave Riccio here along with Matt Allen, and we've got Trevor Bajorian with us from the state emissions people.
Something or other.
Not good at all these
The guys that a lot of people want to
details.
cuss at when they fail emissions.
Right, but they're really doing a good thing, and it's cleaning up the air. And so if you guys have any questions related to emissions, 602-277-5827. Trevor can help us out with any other car questions as well. He said, fuel injection problems, computer programming, all that stuff. You can give us a call on whatever you want to talk about. It reminds me of a part from my favorite movie.
Afternoon, Smog Patrol. Had your emissions checked?
No, sir.
Fluorocarbons, ozone?
No, sir.
Well, let's check it out.
I love Fletch.
Fletch. There's always a spot for Fletch. There's so many scenarios where Fletch just fits right in real well. And if you haven't seen Fletch, that's like mandatory viewing. You need to get out from underneath the rock.
Well, every now and then,
get the movie.
Every now and then, I'll quote a line from Fletch, and people look at me. I'm like, oh yeah, you know.
And not Fletch 2, Fletch.
Fletch, just
Yeah,
Fletch. What do you
just
do for a
Fletch.
living? Well, I'm a shepherd, and they stare at me funny. I'm like, Fletch, you wouldn't get it.
Yeah, you gotta. Yeah.
So, hey, let's go with Joe in Mesa on a 1991 Cadillac Coupe de Ville. How can we help you, Joe?
Yes. This hasn't got anything to do with emissions. 'cause
Oh,
I
well,
already
you're just gonna have to
passed
call
the-
back later then. I'm teasing.
Pardon?
I'm teasing. Go ahead.
You want me to go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay. The right blinker blinks about every 30 seconds. And I put a new bulb in it, and the left blinker works good. The rear lights are both on the right side, on the blinker side, and I see the right side blinker is on. Troubleshooting. Could the flasher be going bad, or could it be part of the turn signal switch? Because
Yes.
when I turn to the left and I turn back, it cancels.
Well, yeah. The answer is yes. It could be both of those things. And one thing to remember that a lot of people don't realize is that oftentimes cars have two flashers. There might be a flasher that for some reason just does the right or left side of the car, and then there's a flasher for the hazards, and then the other side that's not independent. So what the easiest test, you said the left side was working fine, or one side was working fine. I would turn that side on, and I would go around and look at each one of the lights that is flashing. Then turn the right side on and see if the same lights are illuminating. If they're just on solid, you want to make sure that they're all working. The other way to do it, just to check the bulbs and such, is to turn on the flasher. Everything that's happening on the right side of the car should be happening on the left side, and vice versa. Other than that, then I'd probably be looking at it. If all the bulbs and everything are working, I'd be looking hard for the other flasher or both flashers. And then after that, you've got to get the road map out, aka the wiring diagram, and just sort it out. That's the only way to go about doing it. Just give a methodical approach, go through the tests. And there's no test. There's no book. You take that in the shop. There's no, let me go to page 47. Turn signal doesn't work on the right side. It only flashes once every 30 seconds. You've got to be able to go in and figure it out.
You just plug into it, and the little machine tells you what's wrong.
I need to get one of those.
For sure. Hey, Joe, thanks for the call. 602-277-5827, 602-277-KTAR. We've got a patient, Robert, from Phoenix, calling on a 2011 Chevrolet Silverado. Hey, how can we help you, Robert? You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Yeah, I've got a question about exhaust. Now, I'm looking into putting in a loud, obnoxious exhaust because my truck is lifted and it's very pretty and I want it to sound good.
Well, if you're going to look good, you got to sound good.
Yeah, exactly. That's my philosophy anyway. Anyhow, I was wondering if there's any problems with emissions with that. I know in my younger days I used to hollow out catalytic converters and make it sound really, really nasty. But here in Arizona, I'm new to Arizona, so I'm new to this whole emissions deal out here.
Yeah, it is a little bit different in the state of Arizona versus some other places for sure.
So, Robert, I had my fingers in my ears saying la 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 when you said something about hollowing out a catalytic converter. But with regards to exhaust, if you're not changing the catalytic converter out, meaning you're doing a catback system, there shouldn't be any problems whatsoever. If you're doing in front of the catalytic converter, you've got to make sure that your oxygen sensors and everything are still there so that the computer doesn't complain at you and turn that check engine light on.
Well, yeah, and you would never. I mean, that would essentially be ruining what amounts to a brand new truck to me. 4-year-old truck, and somebody goes and hacks it up with taking out oxygen sensors. I mean, it just doesn't work well. But there are companies that make high flow catalytic converters, and the performance exhaust companies are all making these converters because they know there's a market for it. People want to use them and want to hop up their cars.
And the manufacturers that are making those equipment have to ensure that they are not going to A, void your warranty if you still have it, or B, cause your emissions to be something that'll not meet federal standards.
And that's one thing too. These car manufacturers have to guarantee the emissions equipment for is it 8 years and 80,000 miles?
Correct.
That's a federally mandated thing.
Correct.
So, hey, thanks so much for the call, Robert. We are going to go with Chip real quickly from Mesa on an 05 Ford Excursion. How can we help you, Chip?
Hey guys, speaking of check engine lights, I just bought this Excursion with 100,000 miles, and driving home from New Mexico buying it, the check engine light came on, and it's got the sinister aftermarket ERG and air oil cooler because that Power Stroke 6.0 had those issues. Mm-hmm. Do you guys recommend somebody to work on something like that? I'm a little worried about the dealership working on a chipped vehicle.
Yeah, for your for that car, I would take it to ADS, Automotive Diagnostic Specialties, or on Chandler Boulevard, just east of I-10 there.
Chandler and I-10, perfect.
Yeah, they're a Bosch diesel service center, and they do a lot of that work. And I have a 2005 Excursion that just turned 100,000 miles on Wednesday. Yeah,
mine did yesterday.
All right. Well, I really enjoy mine. It's a good vehicle. It's my school bus hauling the family around.
Well, when it comes to emissions, diesels, you don't just look for the check engine light. You do an opacity test?
Yeah, so the diesel test is completely different, and you should know that I'm an advocate for changing that to where we're actually testing diesel vehicles for OBD as well. I believe it was 2008 when diesel vehicles became OBD compliant, so anything after that we can test. But what we test for diesels right now is the thickness of the smoke that they're putting out. Our failure rate for diesels is actually pretty low. I think it's 1% or less. Doesn't
really happen.
Because there's not, especially with today's technology and the new systems they've put in place, diesel smoke is not the same problem it was in the past.
I always get nervous. I just said I have an Excursion and it's a diesel that we had to take to emissions. Oh my God, I really pucker up. When you're going through the emissions, if you've never been through the emissions test in a diesel and you're worried about your car, good Lord, that thing, it's like foot to the floor, and you think that the connecting rods are going to come out of the side of the engine. What's with that? They just need to ramp that thing up, rev it, or I don't understand the test.
Well, the reason for the test, it's called the snap idle test, and that's why they floor it as they do. That's going to be your period of highest smoke. And so diesels, as you know, probably can rev okay without having too much risk to them, but as the owner of the vehicle, it does rattle your nerves a little bit.
Oh, yeah, big time.
When we come back, we're taking your calls at 602-277-5827. You can also text us at 411-923. You're listening to Matt and Dave, your KTAR car guys, here on Bumper to Bumper Radio. We'll be right back.
Few cities are as car-centric as Phoenix, and this is the show that'll help you to better understand that machine you depend on to get around the valley. It's Bumper to Bumper Radio. KTAR News on 92.3 FM and the KTAR app for Android and iPhone.
Well, welcome back to Bumper Radio. I am Dave Riccio here along with Matt Allen, and we are here to help you with your car. We've also got Trevor Bajori in with us. We're talking about emissions or anything related to your car today. You can give us a call at 602-277-5827. Bumper to Bumper Radio is a show about you and your car. we have a website called bumpertobumperradio.com, and on there is a list of shops that Matt and I feel are great shops to take care of you in your car. I know there's a lot of anxiety about car repair, and gosh, I just don't want to be taken advantage of. I don't know who to trust. All those shops are great shops. I would send anyone there tomorrow and know that they'd be well taken care of. So bumpertobumperradio.com. You can also find the link to myazcar.com on our Facebook page if you go there.
And if you're there like us, we could use a
yeah,
friend
we're,
or two. Right?
We're light on friends.
Hey, one thing that not really related to your car, but somewhat related, I saw a blurb on the news last night and actually on KTAR.com about DPS. They are monitoring the traffic on the 51 this weekend with an airplane. And I got reminded of it early this morning as my house seemed to be where they're making their U-turns. And this plane's really low. I drive the 51 every day. There's a lot of speeders, a lot of traffic. There's been a lot of rollover, especially in that northern area. So if you're out today, don't just slow down today because the airplane is there. You may want to just check your whole card and slow it down a little bit.
Just check yourself.
And they are out there. I had to go downtown this morning, and I saw 2 or 3 people pulled over. And what they're doing, they're just flying around. They've got units sitting on top of the off-ramps or specific areas, not on the freeway, and you're just cruising along saying, my radar detector's not going off. I don't see any cops. Kablamo, you're busted. So watch out. They want to really get people to slow down.
There's nothing more fun than being pulled over than having to pay a speeding ticket or go to school. Send your Saturday into school. That's no fun.
Or whatever else it is you shouldn't be doing.
Well, let's get to, let's see here. We are going to go with Dennis in Phoenix on an 07 Honda Fit. Dennis, you're on Bumper to Bumper Radio. How can we help you?
Yes, sir. I'm trying to find out. I've got the Fit, ran through the emissions and failed. And I've got a trouble. The check engine light came on. It has been on for quite some time with an OP0172 code. And definition says is fuel system too rich, bank 1. Now, I've gone through and I've replaced the O2 sensors on my catalytic converter, front and back. I've done the coils. I've done fuel injectors. I've spent over $1,000 to get it fixed, and it's still not working right. So I ended up getting the waiver, paying for a waiver, but I still need to get this fixed.
You do, and that's what I would call a WAG, and $1,000 WAG.
Wild a guess?
Yeah, I mean, man, and I hate to hear that because you just wasted a bunch of money. Nothing that you did fixed your car. I mean, somebody needs to get in there and find out what's happening. Just a lot of people kill the messenger. The oxygen sensor is just telling the story of what's happening in the exhaust system. And sometimes they lie. I mean, sometimes they're out of calibration. They're not thinking like they should think, and they are bad. But there's tests to do that. Catalytic converter, same thing. You can know that converter is good or bad basically just off the readings of the pre-CAT O2 and the post-CAT O2. Too rich. That means it's getting too much fuel, and the oxygen sensor is seeing that, and that oxygen sensor is saying back to the computer, hey, there is too much fuel down here. Give me some brake. Cut it back. And so the car has to cut back the fuel. So either the car doesn't have the ability to cut it back anymore, which would be a mechanical failure. Maybe there's sucking something off the evap. You might have an injector that's hung open. I'm not sure. I don't believe that car has a mass airflow sensor. Somebody just needs to get in there with the right equipment and do some testing and get it fixed.
Well, he brought up a good point, and I don't really know a ton about it, but I was hoping Trevor could answer to it. He got a waiver. Now, what is a waiver all about, and how does someone get a waiver?
Okay, so the waiver program is designed for vehicles that are failing. They actually have to go through the test twice and fail twice and document that the cost to fix the vehicle is over a specific threshold. The important thing to know about a waiver is that you can only have one in the lifetime of the vehicle. It's not as long as you own it and you sell it and somebody else can get a waiver. It's the lifetime of the vehicle. In fact, that's supposed to be disclosed when you sell a vehicle.
Huh.
Yeah, I was going to say that could really hurt the resale value of a car. 2007, I still consider that a new car. It's a modern car, and I don't want to make you feel bad, but that car probably could have been fixed for much less than $1,000. It's just my initial guess. Is there stats on what the cost average repair costs and such are? Because I know when we fill out the form, we've got to put down the dollar amount. Do you know what the average OBD2 repair is?
Well, the challenge with that is the data that we get on costs is not
Skewed.
our data.
Yeah.
And, for example, when I take my own car through and I fix something, what's
Sure.
the cost? 0. And so I'm skewing the numbers even though I may have spent money on it. And so we do have some costs. It's really low, honestly. A lot of people don't fill that out. We want that information to be able to analyze it and figure out how we can help people. But ultimately, if they don't put it on, we're still going to retest your car. So the data isn't very accurate.
And Dennis, if you're looking for a shop, bumpertobumperradio.com. You can find a good shop there in the Phoenix area to take care of you.
Well, I'm looking at a text here, Matt. Look, he's got a 2006 Cadillac, and it's got some sort of overheating issue going on. He wants to trade the car, and he's wondering if he should fix it before he should trade it in. What's that going to do to the value of the car? What do you think? Do you fix it before you trade it in? Is it even worth it? You got to find out what they're going to give you for a good working car. In order, let's say that, hey, we're going to give you $10,000. Well, what if it's broken? It's we got to get through that. And what is it going to cost to repair the car? If it's only going to cost you $500 to fix it, but you're going to lose $3,000 in value, we'll absolutely fix the car.
Well, yeah, and are you trading it in because it's overheating and you don't want to fix it, or were you shopping for a car already, and this just happened to be the case now? So
this is an ethical question I have, because I own a transmission shop, and people come in and their transmission's bad, and maybe it doesn't act up for like 30 miles, but they're like, I'll just go trade it in. Hey, I'm great if you want to go trade the car, and as long as you're upfront with the dealership and say, this has a problem, because the reality is they may not catch it, they may sell it to somebody, and someone's going to get hurt, so you got to pay for your own problems. You can't make them somebody else's.
Quite honestly, Dave, I don't think that you go trade that car and tell the dealer it's got an overheating problem. They're not disclosing that.
No, they may pass it right back on.
Most of those cars, unless it's a really nice cherry car, it's never going to see the car lot. Or they might go run it through their used car, get ready, and see what's wrong with it. And then if not, it's going to get blown out to the dealer. To the auction. So, but you definitely don't want to sell that car. Like you said, David, ethical question. You're going to go sell that car to a single mom or a family that's, needs to get something going, and then all of a sudden, you're free and clear and you got your money in your pocket, but you just serve these guys up a plate of poo.
Greed can be a problem. Well, we're going to go with Jeff in Phoenix on a 1997 GMC 1500 pickup. How can we help you, Jeff? You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Good morning, guys. Yeah, I have a couple of questions for you. I got about 211,000 miles on this truck. Have had it forever. When it's warm, when it's cold, no problems with oil pressure. Once it heats up and you go to an idle, which is about 600, 700 RPMs, the oil pressure gauge goes to 0, light comes on, all of that thing. And then unrelated to that, at about 70, this thing has a hesitation in it that doesn't affect the RPMs, but you can feel it, and it's on about a 12-second interval.
12 seconds. So you feel like is it like a hesitation or more of a hiccup? Does it feel like a hiccup?
It's a hesitation, almost like it stops firing, it slows down. Just it doesn't really slow down, but you can feel like it almost wants to, and then it only lasts. So it has a 12-second interval, but it only lasts for a split second or half a second, enough to feel.
12-second interval at 70 miles an hour. What about at 75 miles an hour?
Yeah, from about 65 to 75, it does it. Anything slower, it doesn't really. You don't notice it.
Wow. We need one of our armchair quarterbacks that's texting to send us a message on that one. As far as the oil pressure goes, I'm not sure where the model year split is, but there are some of those that the oil pressure ring or the O-ring for the pickup tube for the screen, those things dry rot, get hardened up and split, and it will allow it to suck air. I'm just not sure when that started happening. It was on the 5.3-liter engine, and I think that came out more in 99. I'm not 100% certain on that one, but we need to get a good oil pressure test. Someone needs to hook up a mechanical gauge and actually do a real pressure test and confirm that it's bad, or confirm what the oil pressure is and make sure it's not just a sender or a switch.
Yeah,
or
and 212,000 miles, there's a little bit more room in them crank bearings.
Big time. And then as far as that hesitation problem, drop it off. That's something, if you brought that to my shop, we'd have a more in-depth conversation. We might go out and drive it with you, but I'm going to tell you, we need the car for a couple days, and we need a couple $100 to start looking. So.
Well, we've got We've got a text here. Hi, guys. I have a 2004 Jeep Grand Cherokee. I had my alignment done a few months ago, but my Jeep would violently shake. My steering wheel is uncontrollable. That's the old Jeep shake, huh?
That's the death wobble.
And that happens.
Yeah, what's happening in there is the caster, which is one of the alignment angles, is out of alignment. But it's out of alignment because there's a worn part, probably a trailing arm bushing or something in that front suspension. So, I mean, I can feel it. It's probably around 45 or 50 miles an hour, and you think you think it's over. The world's coming to an end. Then once you slow down a little bit, hit the brakes, sometimes you can drive through it, sometimes you can't.
Well, I've had a lot of Jeeps, and they're all lifted. And when you start lifting Jeeps, you start really running into those problems. One of the ways I used to do it is just beef up the steering stabilizer, and that would take care of that caster shake.
Yeah, but next time you're at the grocery store, start running with the grocery cart, and if you've got one with a bad wheel, that thing is screaming back and forth, left and right. That's the same thing that's happening with your Jeep. You've got to get that, and I bet you'll notice that wheel is loose on the on its mounting bracket or something like that. So you definitely got something wrong in the front end.
Well, we're going to go with John in Phoenix. I'm not sure if this is a car question or a lawnmower question. How can we help you, John? You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Yeah, I hear you got the emission guy there. So, I've been driving, for about 45 years, so I've driven quite a few cars. And I'm not really into these emissions. Not that I've had problems failing. I tend to get rid of the car before it gets that old. But, I remember reading one time that lawnmowers put out, in that hour or two that you use it a week, more emissions than your whole car does in a week. So I was just wondering why they're not doing anything for lawnmowers, and they're making the cars have all these emission control devices.
Good question.
All right, so a couple things here. One, especially if you're using a two-cycle engine on your lawn equipment, absolutely, there's a lot more emissions coming from that. There's no feasible testing program that we could develop for that, although EPA has come out with more stringent standards to control that from a manufacturing side. As the equipment's manufactured, they have to meet more stringent standards, but a lot of that is also dependent on the maintenance of the equipment. If you're not maintaining it, changing the spark plugs, changing the filters, you're right that there's a lot of pollution from that, but DEQ's perspective is we're going to control what we can control.
Yeah, I bought a weed whacker. It's a pole saw. I've got a lot of bushes and stuff, so I do my stuff. In my it's a 4-stroke, but it does still take big soil. It's got a catalytic converter on my weed whacker pole saw. I was shocked when I bought that. So Dave is trying to do something over
It's
there.
time for Fact or Fiction.
I haven't played that in a while. I'm a little out of touch. All right, the fact or fiction for today, Matt, I'm going to ask you first, and then I'm going to ask the emissions guy if you're right or wrong. I think you can get this one right, though. I can disconnect my battery just before going to the emissions station, and I'll pass. Fact or fiction? Be careful.
I'm going to have to say it's a big old fiction.
Big
old F.
I don't know, Trevor, is he right? I mean, people do try it.
Absolutely, they try it all the time. So the deal with pulling your battery, or if you have a scanner, you can connect the scanner to the car and clear all your codes. What that does, though, is there's certain systems on your car, like the EVAP system we were talking about before, that aren't monitored continuously. And so what happens is you reset those systems, and so when you come into our station, they'll be listed as unready. And that is a rejection. We cannot test the vehicle because we don't know what the status of it is. And interestingly, I believe the threshold is 2001. Anything 2001 and older, you can have 2 unready monitors and still pass. In 2002 and newer, you can only have 1. We've changed our program recently to where if you come through and the vehicle is unready, you have to wait till the next day to come back through again. It means you're going to be driving the car, hopefully the monitor's set. If you fail that second time, or you're rejected that second time for being unready, you got a couple more days you have to wait. And so it's the intent of that is to make you drive the car a little bit and hopefully get it ready.
So it can test itself. Well, when we come back, you're listening to Matt and Dave, your KTAR Car Guys on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
This is Bumper to Bumper Radio, KTAR News on 92.3 FM.
Well, welcome back to Bumper Radio. I'm Dave Riccio here along with Matt Allen, and we've got Trevor Bajori in with us from the Emmissions Places, Arizona Department of... Yeah, I screw that up every time. That acronym gets me.
ADEQ.
ADEQ. That's good. So we got to get right to the phones. We've got Kyle from Tonopah on an '05 Ford Excursion. Kyle, you're on Bumper to Bumper Radio. What can we help you with?
Hi, I'm calling about that guy that just called in about his '05 he had with the check engine light.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. He's probably has an EGR delete. And that's going to trigger a P0401 code, which is an EGR flow, insufficient flow code. I had the same issue with mine, and did a little digging and discovered that my EGR cooler, the ends are welded up.
Mm-hmm.
The way you can find that, get somebody with a good scan tool. You monitor your intake air temperature too, and you command the EGR flow. If that sensor doesn't register a change in temperature, increasing, then your EGR cooler is welded shut. It's not going to have any effect on performance, and just thought I'd throw that out there for that guy in case he's worried about his check engine light.
Yeah, but then the problem is you have the emissions failure. You want to probably get that fixed, because there's a problem with leaving the check engine light on just because you say you know what it is.
It doesn't discriminate.
It doesn't tell you what the next problem is. And actually, on my excursion, I did put on the EGR cooler, the aftermarket this and that. And the EPA's been cracking down on companies that would, that 6-liter engine is the same thing that's in a heavy-duty Navistar truck. So what I was going to do, but I couldn't, was delete the EGR valve, do the computer reprogramming to get around that, because that EGR cooler has been a problem. But you can't really do that anymore. They're not. The EPA is cracking down, and they're really penalizing the shops. So shops aren't even going to be offering that anymore.
For sure. Well, let's go to James in Chandler on an '06 Chevrolet. Looks like he's got a diesel as well. How can we help you, James?
Yeah, I have a '06 K2500 diesel. I have a check engine light because of one of my glow plugs. Is that do they do the OBD, or do they look for check engine on the 2006?
They don't. So diesel emissions get tested by opacity currently. I said earlier in the show I'm a fan of starting to do OBD on diesel vehicles, but right now they do not. So they'll check the smoke coming out of the back, and so just depending on what the problem is, that may or may not cause you to fail the test.
Yeah, because you really don't need the glow plugs here in Arizona this time of year, but but like you said, it might be some other kind of problem with the engine if I don't fix it soon.
Yeah, that was a good point. Thanks for the call. Remember, there is not the check engine light test on the diesels.
On the diesels, you get to skip that program, and you got a 1% chance of failing, so pretty good odds. So we're going to go with Chris in Mesa on a 2008 Ford Taurus. How can we help you, Chris? You're on Bumper to Bumper Radio.
Hey, guys. Good afternoon. I love your program. Wanted to make sure you know that first off.
Thank you.
I got a 2008 Ford Taurus, and I've got a real bad brake wobble. And it's usually anywhere higher than 45 to 50 miles per hour. You touch the brakes, and the front wheel just starts going nuts.
Okay.
And it's gotten to the point where it's actually the steel is showing on the very inside of the two front tires. So, I've replaced them, obviously, but it's just driving me nuts.
My first thought is that you have a brake problem, but now that you're brake problems are not going to wear the tires out, though. Yeah. So I'm beginning to wonder if you don't have a problem with the steering, suspension, a tie rod end, or something like that, a control arm bushing, and when you step on the brakes, it just makes it worse. You could have two problems. You could have a slightly warped brake rotor that appears even worse because you've got a worn-out front suspension component or steering component, something like that. So I think it's a matter of getting your car into a shop. There's a couple great bumper-to-bumper radio shops in Mesa. Probably start off with a brake inspection and what we would call basically shaking down the front end.
Yeah, make sure there's nothing loose, blown strut, something like that, causing those problems.
Yeah, more likely. But, there's some debate. Do warped rotors really cause the is it warped rotor or is it pad transfer? Is it material transfer from the pads to the rotors? Dave and I went and toured Centric Brakes, and that's what their big thing was. That you're really not warping the rotors, but I don't know that I buy that 100% because real world we machine rotors on some cars, and they are warped like crazy. So
for sure. Well, thanks for the call, Chris. David, we're going to get to your call off air. But I wanted to thank Trevor for coming in to help our listeners with these emissions questions. I know it's the great unknown, and gosh, I sit here in line in this car, and am I going to pass? What's going to happen at the other end? I think people have a lot of questions about that. What would be the number one question you hear?
I think the number one question, well, besides how long am I going to have to wait in line, which check myizycar.com. There's a Q cam that you can actually see pictures of what's on there. And then the other one is, am I going to pass if I have a check engine light on? And so I want to make sure that everybody knows, no, you will not pass. Get that fixed before you come in.
And we made a good point, the check engine light, because I've literally seen people come in the shop and there's a little piece of black electrical tape right over top of that check engine light. And that check engine light doesn't discriminate. It's a yellow light, and we say yellow lights don't mean you got to pull right over because it's an emergency, but it's something you do have to deal with. It's like caution. If you say, "Oh, that's on because I got a bad gas cap," well, when you got a bad something else, you're going to have no idea that the state of the vehicle has changed. So it is definitely worth not, keep your car fixed. You can, one weed, you can ignore it, 2 weeds, 3 weeds, keep your car, have some pride of ownership, take care of that thing. I see cars with 70,000 miles on it are complete jalopies, and I see the next one with 150,000 miles on it. It's a real cream puff.
Yeah, and when you're driving downtown someday, look at that big brown cloud over there and just think how much you could be contributing to that. I mean, you're only a little teeny bit of it, but a lot of little teeny bits equal a big brown cloud.
Well, thanks for joining us. Thanks, Bree, for running the show. If you're looking for a friendly, honest, competent shop, you can find them at bumpertobumperradio.com. As we said before, make sure to like us on Facebook. We're looking for some more friends. We're running shy. Remember, never to text and drive, and clean up the air. And if you got one of them smoky lawnmowers, it's time for a new one with a catalytic converter on it. We'll see you next week.